So our gospel reading today from Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 35, reminded me of the story of two men talking at work after a particularly boisterous retirement for a fellow worker. One of them said, "I know your wife sometimes moans when you were out late at night. Was your wife mad when you got home so late last night?" The second man replied, "Yes, she was historical." "Don't you mean hysterical?" said the first man. "No, I mean historical. She brought up things that had happened 40 years ago." Well, in our parable today, Jesus gives an example of an unforgiving attitude. And over the years, I've had many conversations about forgiveness. And today I want to think a little bit about what it means to forgive. This is all about how should we react when we are wronged. And the obvious answer from the passage is forgive them. But life, as we know, isn't as simple as that. I suspect most of us are agreed that in principle, forgiveness is a good thing. And generally is not a problem, although it may be very hard, when somebody regrets their actions. But what happens if they don't want your forgiveness? What happens if they can't listen? Maybe the person has died. What happens if they won't admit they were in the wrong? They don't care or they're unrepentant. Why should we forgive others if they show no remorse? How should we forgive people who show no inclination to confess their sins? Should we forgive unconfessed sin in other people? Well, the basic message from the parable this morning is that God has forgiven us an immeasurable amount. And as Christians, we are expected to act in the same way. But there are a number of points that I think I need to make about this. Firstly, we need to recognise that God acts in a way that we can't. That is because he is God and we're not. God, in the person of Jesus, acts as forgiver, judge, and for the repayment of sin. He's able to do that because he is perfect. And because God is perfect, he can't abide sin. So whilst he may offer forgiveness to everyone, if the sin remains, the division remains. The separation has to remain. Because God has to remain consistent with himself and his character. The second thing to mention is that forgiving a person is a way to allow them back into a full relationship with us. And in that area, we're a bit like God, reflecting his image, as it were. God offers forgiveness as a way back for us into a full relationship with himself. However, for people to receive forgiveness, they have to do just that. Receive it. It's a bit like this. If someone won £1 million on the TV programme Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and they're given £1 million cheque, in order to spend the money, they have to cash the cheque. If a person chooses not to cash the cheque, then the money isn't there for them. If a person chooses not to cash the forgiveness cheque, then they have been offered forgiveness, but they've rejected the forgiveness and the relationship and the restoration that goes with it. Now, it doesn't mean that God has taken back the offer of forgiveness. They've chosen not to receive it. They may choose to receive it later in life, they may not. And it should be like that with us. We can offer forgiveness. It's up to them whether they receive it. But if they don't receive it, we don't take that offer back. Thirdly, forgiveness is not a matter of warm, fuzzy feelings towards somebody. It's a matter of will. This is not about saying what they did didn't hurt or that it wasn't important. Forgiveness is about choosing, deciding to forgive, deciding not to hold a grudge. And there's nowhere that's better demonstrated than by Jesus on the cross when he says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing." Making a decision to forgive can often be the start for things to get better, even if a person you forgive shows no remorse for their actions. And there is a danger, I think, sometimes in Christian circles, that we suggest that forgiveness is as if nothing had happened. But people do have to live with the consequences of their actions. We may forgive someone, but things may still not be as they were before. This parable tells us we must forgive and that it can also benefit us. If we forgive, we don't carry around that additional baggage that goes with unforgiveness, the things that eat away at us, that desire for revenge and retaliation, that lack of trust that we develop in other people. If we forgive, we lose that constant sense of being grieved. So, in conclusion, we should offer forgiveness to everyone. Firstly, because it's healthier for us to do that. Secondly, because it opens up the door from our side for reconciliation, even if they choose not to walk through that door. And thirdly and finally, we should forgive because Jesus said we should. Forgiveness costs. Forgiveness is not the easy way, but forgiveness is God's way. It is the Christian way. Amen.